Hi there, it's Kim, and today I want to talk about something that can be deeply emotional and that most of us will face at some point, and that's downsizing. And I don't mean the Pinterest perfect version, not minimalism for the sake of just aesthetics, but real downsizing where your heart gets involved. And this isn't about, just decluttering your space for good vibes. This is about grief and growth and memory and making peace with the life that you've already lived so that you can fully live in the one you're in now. So let's talk about it. Okay, so let's dig in. Let's start with what is Swedish death cleaning? And you may have heard of it. It's a practice where older adults, aka me, begin to clear out their possessions so that when they die, their loved ones aren't burdened with figuring out, what to do with everything. And it's not as morbid as it sounds, it's actually a really thoughtful act. And it's about removing that uncomfortable emotional labor that's required when you're downsizing from the people who would otherwise have to wonder things like, did she want me to keep this? Is this important? Was this important to her? What if I throw it out or I donate it? And would she have cared? And that part really spoke to me because while I didn't originally downsize for that reason, I've now gotten to a place where I have cleared away the things that might burden my family. And there's nothing left for my husband or my daughters to really have to sift through and question, and there's no attic full of mystery boxes. If it's in my home now, it's because I love it and I will keep it or I will use it. So let me back up just a little bit and tell you how I got here. So I've had 3 big moves in the last 12 years. Move number 1 was in 2013, and that was from one Virginia Beach location to another. And I had lived in that house for 9 years. It was 2,200 square feet, and the attic was quite literally the full length of the house, and it was packed. And every paper my daughters ever brought home from school were saved in banker's boxes. I'm not exaggerating. I hadn't parted with a single stuffed animal. All of their clothes that had long since been outgrown were there. Their baby things. My children's childhood was in that attic. I had bags and bags of clothes that ranged from size 4 to size 12 that I donated basically. And why did I have the size range? Because, hope or guilt or fear that I would be in a financial situation where I couldn't afford to replace those items. And, who knows? So there were boxes of antique items that had belonged to my grandmother who has passed away. And they were not valuable, but they were things that I had to keep. They were had to keep items. And I had to keep them to preserve her memory. And my thoughts were always, she would have wanted it. And I was trying to seek her approval. And I moved much of it with me, but I got rid of a tremendous amount of stuff too. I had a small dumpster to eliminate anything and everything that I wasn't donating, that I didn't like. I didn't like that I had to get rid of anything at all. I was actually pretty angry about it, and I did not want to have to make the emotional decisions. I was in the attic for days and days going through memories, but I ended up, quite a bit lighter, and considering the standard of what I had started with. Still a lot of stuff. Move number 2. This was bigger. This was from Virginia Beach to Charlotte, North Carolina, and about a 6-hour distance. And this time we were going to be that far away without the option to make multiple trips between the old house and the new house. So because of the distance, I had to really start letting go. And not everything would fit in a large U-Haul truck. So, and that in our 2 cars. And I gave up a garden swing that I loved, a patio set, planters, so many planters, 2 huge knockout rose bushes that I had babied for years, an upright antique piano, multiple pieces of furniture, large screen TV, everything that the decision about space required of me. We still moved a lot though, and I still wasn't ready for the deep stuff. The boxes of memories that were left in the attic moved with me this time. I was eliminating my belongings for a second time, what felt like was against my will. So, but that's just how it felt. Move number 3, cross country from Charlotte to Seattle. This was the reckoning. And it was the biggest and most emotional move of my whole life. We could only afford the rental of one pod, they're ridiculously expensive, to transport all of our belongings across the country. So what we took with us was in the pod, or what we could fit in the Jeep Cherokee. And that was it. We even had to sell one of our cars. And, I sold or gave away over 100 plants. And you've got to understand, these were my babies. Probably 200 books easily. And that was really tough. So much garden decor and glider swing and big wrought iron patio set and literally 2 bedrooms full of furniture, futon, just everything. And lots of stuff that was very important to me, or so I thought. My grandfather's recliner was a hard one, and it didn't recline anymore, and the cats had scratched it up terribly years ago, but I had covered it with a crochet throw and kept it anyway. And it was too damaged to donate, so I put it in a dumpster, and I cried. And not for the chair, but for the memory of my grandfather. I discarded things like folded up Mylar balloons that had been given at my baby showers 30 plus years prior that said "It's a girl." Bags and bags of Beanie Babies. But truth be told, I did actually save a tub of them, and now they are well played with by my grandchildren, which brings me so much joy, knowing that they're fulfilling their toy destinies finally, and with no tags on them. And I even took photos of many of the items that I parted with, but, I choose not to look at the photos purposely, but at least I know that they're there if I do want to see them. The goodbye was pretty much enough. So here's what it taught me, all of these moves and downsizing. After these 3 moves and decades of dragging boxes from attic to attic, it's finally stopped. Everything that I own fits in our 1,200 square foot apartment. There is no attic, just one small storage unit, and that, contains hot tubs of holiday decorations. And while I'm not a minimalist, and I don't want to be, I'm no longer buried under the weight of things that no longer serve my life today. And I very much live with the rule of cozy, that's my vibe. And, I want my favorite things surrounding me, and, making my surroundings feel warm and inviting. And I live here. My life happens here. So when you walk in the house, you can immediately see what I'm passionate about and, who I am. And that feels good to me. So after all of those details, here are 5 things that I've learned from downsizing. Number 1, you can love a memory without keeping the object. And the things I held on to reminded me of times that are now gone. And my, things like my girls being little, holidays, and younger versions of myself. But I never took the time to look at those things that I kept. They were in the attic. When they were in my possession, until I either had to, or I was forced to move them again, or make a decision about them, I carried them, from place to place to place, like a time capsule. But the memories, they live with me, not in the boxes. Number 2, if you have kids, let them decide what matters most to them. Before we left North Carolina and moved across country, I had my daughters go through the items that I had saved, from their high school years and college years. And because remember, I had long since kind of gone through and narrowed down their early childhood items in the 2 other moves, so at least most of them. So once they chose what to keep, then the rest was no longer my responsibility. And I felt like I had been the guardian of their memories. And now, I didn't need to be anymore. I was free. And that's huge. And then regarding my possessions, I don't expect them to hold on to my things, out of guilt or duty or obligation. If something that I have saved means something to them, then they're welcome to it. But if it doesn't, they can sell it, they can donate it, they can let it go however they see fit, because they are just things. And I recognize that now. I hope that when they remember me, that it will be from our times together and not because of things. This is a different era than I grew up in. And Gen Xers, I think probably most of all, grew up with their grandmother's curio cabinets full of collectibles that needed to be saved forever. And, but then we also wrote in cursive, and that's certainly a less frequently practiced art that has been moved on from. So, you can take a photo that will spark a memory of the item without the physical weight of the item being on your shoulders or over your head. It doesn't have to be in your possession. And I've made it clear, I never, ever want to be the reason that they feel emotionally stuck with an object, because it doesn't feel very good. So, number 3, you don't need to get rid of what brings you joy. And, here's where I kind of break away from the whole, only own 25 things idea of real minimalism. If I have room for it and it makes me or us happy, then it stays. And our space is filled with plants and books, over 600 of them actually, throughout the house. Prints highlighting our trips to Europe and our U.S. travels, refrigerator magnets from everywhere we go that remind me every day of the places that I visited and shared special moments with my husband. And, shelves of crystals and handmade items that I spent time crafting, and pieces that tell our story. And I don't decorate for anyone else's approval. And it is purely for us. And that's what's important. So letting go is a process. This is number 4. Not a personality trait. So I didn't automatically become a light and breezy person who doesn't care about things. Instead, I made hundreds and hundreds of tiny, painful decisions over time, and some still sting. But once you do it, once you really do it, you feel a shift, and the weight lifts, and you realize that you're still you're just less burdened. There is no longer an attic filled with memories literally hanging over your head. So that's important. And number 5, the present is what you're meant to live in. I want to be surrounded by reminders of the adventures that I've had, and not those that belong to somebody else out of obligation. Not what I used to wear or what I used to own, because we only live today. That's it. And, so why not fill that day with things that you see and use and that you love, not what used to matter, but what matters now, right now. So if you're facing a downsize, I get it, it's a lot, or even if you're just standing in front of that box in the garage that, you've moved 4 times and you've never even opened it up to look in there, then this is your gentle nudge. Get started and, ask yourself, do I want my kids or my husband or family to have to make these decisions? Does this object still make me feel happy or just guilty? And, you don't have to go full minimalist, and you don't have to justify to anyone what you keep. But if you can begin to let go of the things that carry a heavier emotional weight than they're actually worth, then you might find more space for peace and freedom, in your everyday life that you're living right now. So if you haven't already, get started, 1 box or bag at a time. Don't wait until, it's a harder burden for you, if you have to move suddenly, or when you're even older and it's more difficult, or until it becomes no longer your stuff to worry about. It becomes your family's, And it will be an amazing gift to leave them guilt-free. So thanks for being here. And as always, please take good care of yourself. And if you haven't yet, please, like or share. And because it will definitely help my channel if you do. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. And I'll talk to you soon. That's it for now. See you next time.